Hi, I'm Wellness Coach Danae Cortés, and I'm recording this video to just chat with you a little bit about how I juggle work, marriage, parenting, all of the things, but I actually really try not to juggle them. I know that's a phrase that we use a lot, and I've had people ask me that question using those words. How do you juggle it all? But I want to kind of talk about how important it is to me to put things down sometimes, not to spend too much time feeling like I've got multiple things in the air and I have to keep them there. So, today's chat is just about how I make mindful choices and try to live according to my values and my priorities, how I rest first, or at least I really try to, and then work according to my capacity for output rather than, holding myself to a standard of work that's greater than the energy that I have to give to it. And my last note here is about intentional living with minimal regrets. So it's not exactly a no regrets philosophy, but minimizing regrets because I'm living in a way that I can be proud of and that feels like I'm living with integrity and that I know in 10 or 15 years down the road, I'm going to feel really good about my choices. So let's dig into the first note, which is mindfulness and choices. So, firstly, I'm taking it a day at a time. I don't feel that you have to be constantly mindful of every single thought and every single emotion. In fact, I found that it's something that's more accessible and useful to those of us who live with a certain level of privilege to practice mindfulness. If you're really in the thick of it in life and maybe in the midst of traumatic situations, staying super mindful can, I don't know, it can exacerbate symptoms. It can kind of help you believe that you're stuck there. And that's something I'll get into another time, my thoughts on that. But being mindful enough that I'm aware of my experience, I'm aware of my thoughts and my emotions, and then I'm empowered to make choices and make change. That is something that I'm privileged to be able to do. So I try to live my life with awareness that, oh, this routine is no longer serving me. Something about this day feels off, and I just need to take a slower pace. And that's actually my situation on this very day here in February of 2025. Things are just a little intense. I've had a lot of clients who are really struggling with the political environment that we're in, and some younger clients that are kind of for the first time realizing that someone should have noticed before they hurt themselves, or something's not quite right in their relationships at home or at school, and it's weighing a little bit heavy on me, to be honest. And so part of my self-care this week is kind of sorting out the empathy that I have to offer and the limits of that, but still bringing a lot of compassion mindfully, and working from home today so that I just have fewer stimulus in my stimuli, that's what I mean to say, in my environment and in my view, um, kind of nestling in and taking good care because I see the need for it. So that requires not juggling things, but putting things down sometimes. So it's not a big professional push today. If anything, it's sort of a coming home and taking good care of myself, noticing that for today, there's just a need to be slower to process and to kind of take my time jumping back into things. So, that mindfulness that I'm privileged to pursue allows me to then make a really empowered choice about how I want to engage with this day. All right. So, values and priorities, that's my next note here. And I would have to say, I do try to prioritize my family relationships first. And I feel like we all say that, and we certainly do our best to do that. But for me, I'm kind of setting up my work life around that priority, around that value of family. So previously, I didn't have the opportunity to do that all the time, and I fully recognize that that's the case for many people. And when I started my coaching practice 5.5 years ago, a big part of the goal was to set up my work in such a way that it it more consistently, not always, but more consistently felt like it was serving my family and my ability to prioritize our family unit, the relationships that we have and the needs that we have. So for me right now, in addition to taking care of myself at home, I most days end work in time to go to pick up my daughter from school and bring her home and spend time together in the afternoon. I do chores and other things as well, but I'm available to her and we have conversations about thoughts and feelings and what's going on, and that feels like an important way for me right now to live out this value and this priority of family. Then I do a little more work in the evenings as she's either getting ready for bed or in bed. And that allows me to find some balance. But again, it's not so much juggling as it is, I'm going to put this down now and focus here. I'm going to put this aside for a season and really focus in on this part so that, like I mentioned earlier, 10, 15 years down the road, I can look back and say, wow, life was hard as it is, but I really showed up to my values and I lived according to what was really the priority at that time. So, a little bit about values and priorities, and then rest first and work to capacity. So, this is a very difficult concept for me. I am not practiced in resting first, but I really believe in it. And I'll try to be more fair in my assessment. I have not always been practiced in resting first, and it's very difficult for me still. It's like, I don't know. I'm learning endurance. I'm gaining stamina in this skill, but it's still extremely challenging for me. So what I mean by this, rest first, is to make sure that I'm prioritizing getting adequate rest physically, but also mentally and emotionally, so that I'm then able to show up to work tasks or home tasks or whatever things kind of require some pouring out of my energy with a full cup. Like I'm ready to do it. I'm not straining to do it. And this is definitely one of the hardest things to live out in a very busy life. But it's important to me because, well, first of all, it just makes sense. If you're being intentional, if you're being mindful, you have to recognize, you have to accept that you cannot give if you have nothing to give, not genuinely, not in a really meaningful way. So it's a really high priority for me to make sure I get enough sleep as much as I can. Just be mindful of how much I have to give relationally before I commit to time with friends or family or even my little family that lives here with me. That's routinely taking time in solitude when I feel the need to do so that I can really spend time, quality time, with my daughter, with my husband, when I have something more to offer them. So like I said, sometimes I come home from work, I pick up my daughter from school, and then we spend the afternoon together. But some of those afternoons, I really don't have a lot to give. And so I try to be honest with myself about that. And then when I'm able to, when she has someone else to look after her, then I'll step away. I'll step away and just kind of take care of myself, tend to my needs for a little bit, and then come back together. And then working to capacity, I try to put a lot of things, everything really, on my calendar, represent it in some way so that I can look and see, oh, there's enough rest built in. There's enough restorative activity built in, aside from like sleep or taking a nap or watching a show. All of my prioritized relationships are reflected there. All of the work that I'm responsible for is reflected there so that I don't have to hold it in my mind and assess, do I have the capacity for more? I can see it. It's there. And then honoring that by not saying yes to more than is possible to do, by not scheduling overtime that is already set aside for my health and well-being. Right now in this season, I'm pursuing a running goal, and part of that is scheduling the runs a few times a week. And then, yes, I say no to seeing a client or having a business meeting in that chunk of time because I've already committed it to myself. And if I'm coaching others to take care of themselves and show themselves compassion, I certainly want to be doing that as well. That allows me to live with integrity in one of the most important ways. And that brings me to my last note for this chat, which is intentional living. It's about living, yes, intentionally and with minimal regrets, not necessarily no regrets. I believe that there are things we will regret and maybe we should regret. Things we would have done differently with different information, different life experience, and that's all right. But I definitely want to set myself up to look back at the majority of my life or the big picture situations that I created with joy and ease if I can. And so setting my life up in these intentional ways with mindfulness and then making choices about what to do, letting my time and my energy reflect my values and my priorities, making sure that I'm well rested to show up to everything so that I have strong memories about what I've done rather than like frying my brain because I didn't rest or I didn't restore myself enough to hold on to those experiences. So all of that kind of rolls into living intentionally and with minimal regrets. I wonder what that looks like for you, or if at this point in your life there are a lot of regrets. Maybe there are more than you're comfortable with, but you have an opportunity now to maybe live a little bit more mindfully. But again, like I was starting to get into earlier, also be aware that mindfulness of really difficult circumstances might require, skillful distractions and intentional support for your mental health so that you're not just kind of living in this difficult and maybe impossible to overcome sort of feeling and space. There's a lot to that, and I definitely want to share more, but I hope that whatever you're going through, that you can consider how to implement some of these approaches if it would be helpful, if it would help you to create a life that you're proud of, a life that you know you'll look back on and appreciate. So again, I'm wellness coach Rebecca Danae Cortés. Thanks for chatting with me today. I look forward to hearing your comments, your thoughts, and I hope that if you'd like to talk more, you'll reach out.